Hello students. Today, we are going to study Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare. The full title is, My Mistress' Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun. Before we begin with the poem itself, let us first understand who Shakespeare was and what makes this poem so special. William Shakespeare was an English poet, playwright, and actor. He lived during the Renaissance period, from 1564 to 1616. The Renaissance was a time of great change in Europe. People were exploring new ideas in art, science, and literature. During this time, poetry was very popular, and the sonnet was one of the most loved poetic forms. Shakespeare wrote 154 sonnets. Most of them deal with themes such as love, beauty, time, and mortality. A sonnet is a poem of 14 lines written in a special rhythm called iambic pentameter. That means each line has 10 syllables, with a pattern of an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. For example, my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. This video covers line-by-line explanation and analysis of Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare. Sonnets also have a special rhyme scheme. A Shakespearean sonnet follows a pattern. This means that the last two lines, called a couplet, usually give a conclusion or a twist to the poem. Now, most love poems in Shakespeare's time followed a particular style known as Petrarchan poetry, named after the Italian poet Petrarch. In that tradition, poets described their lovers as perfect, beautiful, and godlike. They compared their lovers' eyes to the sun, their lips to coral, their skin to snow, and their hair to golden threads. But Shakespeare does something very different in Sonnet 130. He rejects the traditional and exaggerated comparisons. Instead, he describes his lover, or mistress, in a very realistic and human way. At first, it might even sound like he is insulting her. But by the end of the poem, we realize that his love is sincere, deep, and genuine. So, let us now read and explain this poem line by line, to understand what Shakespeare is saying and how he says it. Line-by-line explanation and analysis of Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare. Shakespeare begins this sonnet with a direct statement that his mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. In traditional love poetry, it was common to say that a woman's eyes shone like the sun or the stars. Poets often praised their lovers using unrealistic comparisons. But Shakespeare immediately breaks this tradition. He says that her eyes do not shine like the sun at all. This line sets the tone of the entire poem. It tells us that this is going to be a realistic description of love and not an idealized one. He is not mocking his mistress, but mocking the exaggerated comparisons used by other poets. This line also shows irony. Irony means saying the opposite of what people expect, to make a deeper point. We expect a love sonnet to begin with praise, but instead, it begins with denial. In the second line, the poet continues to break traditional poetic images. Coral is a beautiful red or pink substance found under the sea. In many love poems, women's lips were compared to coral for their redness and beauty. But Shakespeare says that coral is more red than his mistress's lips. This means her lips are not as bright or red as coral. They are probably pale or ordinary. Again, he refuses to exaggerate. He wants to show her as a real human being, not a goddess. This line uses comparison by contrast. Shakespeare takes a familiar poetic image and reverses it. Instead of saying, her lips are like coral, he says, coral is more red than her lips. The meaning becomes the opposite, creating humor and honesty at the same time. Then Shakespeare talks about another common image from love poetry. Poets often compared women's skin to white snow, suggesting purity and beauty. But Shakespeare says, if snow is white, then his mistress's breasts are dun, which means a dull grayish-brown color. This does not mean he finds her unattractive. It means he refuses to lie or exaggerate. Her skin is not like white snow, and he accepts that reality. From a symbolic point of view, the word dun also represents earthiness and natural color. His mistress is not angelic or heavenly. She is human and real. This gives the poem a tone of realism and honest affection. The next line may sound strange to us today, but during Shakespeare's time, it was common to compare a woman's hair to golden wires or threads. That was considered a compliment. But Shakespeare says that if hair were wires, then black wires grow on his mistress's head. This means her hair is black and coarse, not fine or golden. This is another rejection of artificial beauty standards. He is saying that her hair is not golden or shiny, but he still loves her as she is. This line uses metaphor, a literary device in which one thing is compared to another. The wires metaphor is borrowed from conventional poetry, but Shakespeare turns it upside down. Instead of golden wires, we get black wires, making the description more realistic and grounded. In these two lines, Shakespeare continues to reject traditional comparisons. Damasked roses means roses with mixed colors, red and white blended together. Poets often said that their lovers' cheeks were as beautiful as roses. But Shakespeare says he has seen such roses, but he does not see them in his mistress's cheeks. Her cheeks are not rosy or glowing, they are just normal. This is another example of anti-Petrarchan imagery. Instead of praising her like other poets do, he uses plain truth. Yet, this honesty makes the poem more touching because it shows that his love does not depend on perfection. This couplet of lines may sound rude at first. Shakespeare says that some perfumes smell better than his mistress's breath, which reeks. The word reeks in modern English means smells bad, but in Shakespeare's time, it could simply mean smells strongly. So, the meaning is not entirely insulting. Still, the comparison is humorous and honest. He admits that her breath is not always sweet like perfume. This shows hyperrealism and humor. Shakespeare is not mocking his mistress, but mocking poetic exaggeration. He wants to say that love is not based on fantasy. Real love accepts imperfections. These lines also show Shakespeare's use of sound imagery and olfactory imagery, that is, imagery related to smell. He makes us imagine scent in a very human way. Now, Shakespeare moves from physical beauty to voice. He says he loves to hear his mistress speak, but he knows that her voice is not as sweet as music. This shows balance. He is not blinded by love. He is fully aware that her voice is not perfect, but he loves her voice because it belongs to her. This is an example of rational love. Shakespeare's love is based on awareness, not illusion. He knows her faults, but that makes his affection more genuine. It also shows contrast between art, music, and nature, speech. Music is artful and ideal, his mistress's voice is ordinary and real. Yet, he prefers reality. Here Shakespeare says something very important. He admits that he has never seen a goddess walk. Goddesses in myths are usually described as floating or gliding gracefully. But his mistress walks like a normal human being, she treads on the ground. This is another act of rejection of false comparisons. His mistress is not divine, not supernatural. She is a real woman, and that is enough for him. These lines show anti-idealism. Shakespeare is making fun of poets who describe women as goddesses or angels. He says, no woman is like that, and that is perfectly fine. The verb treads means to step firmly on the ground. It gives us an image of real movement and a physical presence. It brings the mistress closer to life and reality. In the final couplet of Sonnet 130, William Shakespeare gives the twist and the conclusion. After all his realistic descriptions, Shakespeare finally reveals his true feelings. He swears, by heaven, that his love is just as rare. It means his love is as precious and unique as any love that has been falsely described in flowery comparisons. The word belied means misrepresented or described falsely. He says other poets lied in their praises, but his simply described love is deep and rare. This ending changes the entire tone of the poem. What seemed like mockery turns into sincere affection. Shakespeare's love is not based on illusion, but on truth. That is what makes it strong. Themes in Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare. Now that we have gone through the lines, let us look at the major themes of the poem. The first theme is realism in love. Shakespeare shows love as it is, not as fantasy. He refuses to lie about beauty. His mistress has flaws, but he still loves her. The second theme is rejection of poetic tradition. He mocks the typical comparisons of love poetry in his time. This is called anti-Petrarchanism. The third theme is true love and sincerity. The poem teaches that real love does not need exaggeration. It is honest and grounded. The fourth theme is irony and humor. Throughout the poem, Shakespeare uses gentle humor. He makes us smile by comparing her to unrealistic images and then rejecting them. This irony gives the poem freshness and truth. Literary devices in Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare. First is simile, which means comparison using like or as. For example, my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Here, the poet uses simile in a negative way. He says her eyes are not like the sun. Second is metaphor, which means comparison without using like or as. In If Hairs Be Wires, hair is compared to wires. But again, Shakespeare reverses it, turning a common metaphor upside down. Third is imagery. Imagery means words that create pictures in the reader's mind. The poem is full of visual imagery: eyes, coral lips, white snow, roses, and black wires. These images help us see the contrast between ideal beauty and reality. Fourth is irony. The entire poem is ironic because it sounds like an insult but becomes a declaration of love. This irony is what makes the poem both funny and touching. Fifth is allusion, which means a reference to something well known. When Shakespeare mentions a goddess, he alludes to mythological women often described in ancient poetry. Sixth is tone. The tone of the poem changes. It begins as humorous and mocking but ends as sincere and affectionate. This shift in tone is one of the most beautiful aspects of the poem. Seventh is iambic pentameter. Each line has 10 syllables with a rhythm that sounds natural to English speech. This gives the poem musical flow and structure. Eighth is rhyme scheme. The rhyme pattern is A-B-A-B, C-D-C-D, E-F-E-F, G-G, which is the pattern of the Shakespearean sonnet. Finally, the poem shows parody. Parody means imitation for humor or criticism. Shakespeare imitates the style of romantic poets, but twists it to make a point about real love. Conclusion. Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare is the most realistic and humorous. At first, it seems that the poet is mocking his mistress, and says her eyes are not like the sun, her lips are not red, her skin is not white, her hair is like black wires, and her breath does not smell like perfume. But if we read carefully, we see that Shakespeare is not insulting her. He is criticizing the false language of other poets. He says that real women are not goddesses, and real love does not need to pretend they are. By the end of the poem, he declares that his love is as rare and as precious as any love based on false praise. His honesty makes his affection stronger. The Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare represents a shift from idealized love to realistic love. It celebrates truth over beauty and authenticity over exaggeration. It also shows Shakespeare's mastery of irony, rhythm, and emotional intelligence. He manages to turn simple, ordinary words into something timeless. Thank you for watching this video on line-by-line explanation and analysis of Sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare.